I was asked on the radio by Russell. Is Russell here?
Yep.
Where you at, Russell?
Right here.
Welcome.
KABF.
Russell asked me, well, how did this get started? I said, well, I just asked my father one day, where were you when I was born?
Mr. Muneer Nasser.
Let's hear it for Ted Ludwig on guitar.
Yeah, Ted.
Joe Vick on bass. And BB. Brian Brown on drums.
Nasser.
My name is Muneer Nasser. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me go ahead and bring the band out and we'll talk a little bit about our special guest. So on the drums tonight, the Reverend Brian Brown. And on the upright bass, the super bad Mr. Joe Vick. All right, I first met this gentleman, our special guest. I was actually playing last year at the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival up in D.C. and we're performing there. I was performing with some various groups led by my friend Paul Carr, and you guys might have maybe heard Paul here last summer. He performed here as one of the special guests. But Muneer called me up shortly after that. We started striking up a conversation, and I learned a lot about him. And I found out that his father was this legendary bass player from Memphis, and but also did his schooling down in Pine Bluff. At UAPB, which I believe had a different name then. What was the name? There you go. Yes. So yeah, and so Muneer's father is Jamil Nasser, and he performed with many of the great players from Ahmad, Jamal to Sonny Rollins to you name it. He's played with them. I mean, and he wrote a really great book.
I'd like to thank Mr. Ted Ludwig for inviting me. As he mentioned, I am the son of the late great bassist Jamil Nasser, but he actually had three names. He was born George Joyner in Memphis, June 21st, 1932, and he started out on Beale Street with B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf and the high-level blues players that occupied that scene at the time. And he eventually went to New York with Phineas Newborn Jr. And I document this in the book.
About his father's life and about the history of jazz in this area, especially in Memphis and in Arkansas. He came down to Memphis, I guess maybe 6 months ago, and did a talk about this book. And it's really interesting because it really ties a lot of how jazz in Memphis and how jazz in Arkansas, how important it is in the whole world of what we know is jazz. So really great book and a true historian of this music. And then I got to hear him play, and I was like, man, I gotta have this guy come down as a guest so he can play for you guys. And really wonderful trumpeter and flugelhorn player. So without further ado, please welcome my good friend, Mr. Muneer Nasser.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Let's hear it for Ted Ludwig on guitar,
Yeah, Ted.
Joe Vick on bass, and BB, Brian Brown on drums.
Nasser.
My name is Muneer Nasser. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank Mr. Ted Ludwig for inviting me. As he mentioned, I am the son of the late great bassist Jamil Nasser, but he actually had three names. He was born George Joyner in Memphis, June 21st, 1932. And he started out on Beale Street with B.B. King and Howlin' Wolf and the high-level blues players that occupied that scene at the time. And he eventually went to New York with Phineas Newborn Jr. And I document this in the book. It's very important because think about this. Roy Haynes just died. He was almost 100. Ahmad Jamal was in his 90s. And these great masters didn't leave a written record of all the lessons and all the experiences that they had. And so they say the greatest jazz library is the cemetery, because a lot of these great masters took these lessons and experiences to the grave. And so we were able to capture some of these great stories. For instance, I was asked on the radio by Russell. Is Russell here?
Yep.
Where you at, Russell?
Right here.
Welcome.
KABF.
Russell asked me, well, how did this get started? I said, well, I just asked my father one day, where were you when I was born? And he said I was in jail. I said, damn, my father's a criminal. I didn't know that. And so what happened, him and Ahmad Jamal, they went to Suriname, Paramaribo, Suriname, and they refused to do a concert because they didn't agree with the cause for which it was organized. And they were put in a jungle jail, and they almost died. They narrowly escaped death. My father told them, Ahmed and Frank, be quiet if you want to live and let me handle this, because he had been through it 7 years before in Africa. I'd like to continue on. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more, but I'm going to get back to the music. So during the course of this concert, I'll share little tidbits from the book. Hopefully you'll buy it, because we have to open this lane of research, because this is a story. There's a story behind the music, and we have to capture that story. One quick one. Sonny Rollins fired my father, Roy Haynes, Gil Coggins, and Donald Byrd. I tell the story in the book, and I saw Roy Haynes in 2010, and he said it's true. He didn't scratch his head. He didn't have to think about it. This is from 1957, just to show you the level of their memories. And he said the only thing he couldn't remember was Gil Coggins. It's a very, very entertaining story, by the way. Right now, we like to play a tune written by a great musician who will be celebrated next year, the centennial celebration of Miles Davis. We like to play a tune from that album, Kinda Blue, the best-selling jazz album to date, and it was made in 1959. So sometime history's today. You know why? Because no one has outsold it, even in 2025. So I hope you enjoy our interpretation of All Blues. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
As Ted mentioned, my father went to Arkansas A&M in Pine Bluff for 3 years. He left because one of the professors said that no jazz musician will get a grade above a C. They had to rehearse at night because jazz wasn't allowed on campus. He established the first dance band. I have a picture in that book of him directing the first jazz. It's the Arkansas State Jazz Collegians was the official name of the band. They won the 1952 Pittsburgh Chorea Poll. And they were supposed to claim the trophy at the Apollo Theater, but the university wouldn't allow them to use the bus to go. Floyd Newman was in that band, who played with Isaac Hayes. He was a member of the Stack musical group that recorded a lot of those great recordings. And we're still looking for the trophy that they won. We'd like to continue now with a tune by Blue Mitchell, and in 1979, on a school night, my father took me and my brother to the village gate because Blue Mitchell had just died, and they had this wonderful tribute to him. Probably one of the greatest gatherings of jazz musicians I've witnessed since, and that was in 1979. And this tune is by Blue Mitchell. It's called Fuji Mama. I would like to play a beautiful ballad written by Billy Strayhorn. It's called Daydream. Thank you very much. Daydream by Billy Greyhawk. We'd like to close with a tune that has a controversial issue surrounding it, because Miles Davis said he composed it, but also Eddie Cleanhead Vincent said he composed it, but he is the official composer. He meaning Eddie Cleanhead Vincent. So we like to play 4.
Thank you very much on behalf of Mr. Ted Ludwig on guitar, Joe Vick on bass, BB, Brian Brown on drums. I would love to autograph some books for you in the back. I have CDs available. Thank you very much for coming out. And we have another set, so please stick around. Thank you very much. Ludwig. We'd now like to continue. You know, how many of you have heard of George Coleman, the tenor saxophone from Memphis, Tennessee? Now, George Coleman, in Miles Davis' book, he names 3 albums that George Coleman was on with him that are among his favorite albums. Yet they've done documentaries and didn't mention his name. And so it's important that we write to correct these omissions that sometimes occur when documenting history. And so I like to play a tune that he recorded with Miles in Nice, in 1963. It's called Autumn Leaves.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Mr. Ted Ludwig on guitar, Joe Vick on bass, the legendary PB, Brian Brown on drums. My name is Muneer Nasser. We like to close with a Brazilian masterpiece called Wave. Yes. Well, it looked like it hurt more than it
Taken from the CD Blue House Session. That was the Muneer Nasser Quintet and Nasser's Blues. And speaking of, first I would say good morning and welcome to Wednesday Jazz Venue. I'm your host Russell, and I have a very, very special guest on this morning, the creator of the tune you just heard, who will appear tomorrow evening in North Little Rock over in Argenta at formerly the Joint, but I believe it's called Birdies now at 7:30. Muneer Nasser, right here on KABF. Good morning, sir. You're on the air now.
Good morning, Russell.
All right, and welcome to Jazz Venue this morning. And also, he has a book out too, y'all. You got to pick this up. It's called Upright Bass: The Musical Life and Legacy of Jamil Nasser, his dad, who was the bass player with Ahmad, Jamal, and recorded on about, I believe it was about 18 albums with him between 1964 and 2000. So, Mr. Nasser, welcome again, and could you just tell us what you're going to be doing tomorrow night over in North Little Rock?
Well, I'm playing with a great guitarist, Ted Ludwig. I'm not sure who's in the rhythm section, but I've heard them because they have a videotape on YouTube, and we're going to swing in there on tomorrow.
Oh, good.
So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, I plan to be there myself. It's at 7:30. It's located right on Main Street in downtown North Little Rock. We're just right across the bridge there. So be there and just have a good time this week. And sir, I'd like to get into your book. It's a fascinating read, and thank you for for bringing it to us. And I did read all through it. It was such godly. I just some of that stuff was just mouth dry.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. And how did you how did you just go about writing this book, and what inspired you to do that?
Now, this question I always answer it in a similar way. I was born June 3rd, 1967, and one day we were just in the car driving, and I asked my father where he was on the day I was born, and he said he was in jail with Ahmad Jamal in Paramaribo, Suriname. And they almost died.
Oh yeah. I saw that part in the book.
You read that?
I saw that book. Yeah, that was some story there. Yeah.
Now to show you how traumatizing that was, Ahmad Jamal refused to discuss that. I know Eugene Holly. I told him about it, and he read about it.
Yeah.
He tried to broach the subject with Ahmad. He wouldn't touch it.
Oh wow. Yes,
my father said, if you want to stay alive, just be quiet. Ahmad was leading the group, but my father led them out of that situation because he confronted that in Africa some years before, maybe 7 years before that.
I see. Okay, and first up, your father became a convert with the Nation of Islam, but his name is just George Joyner, right? Yes, George Joyner from Memphis. And he's part of.
Actually, did not come to the Nation of Islam. He was actually in a group and playing around with Idris Suleiman.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And this is something that a lot of people don't know. Idris Suleiman brought Jamil Nasser and Ahmad Jamal into Islam.
Oh,
that was both of their teachers. And so he never went through the nation because they have some concept that doesn't really accord with the universal perspective of Islam.
I see.
We don't openly condemn a race, Islam doesn't advocate racism, and some of the concepts they had of God in person and Master Muhammad, we don't believe in that.
I see.
And my father talked to them. Don't get me wrong, he sat down with them to get their perspective, but they just couldn't convince him. There was some illogical stuff in their beliefs, and there still is.
I see. Well, I want to go back into some of the early days. Your dad even has a Arkansas connection here. He attended Arkansas A&M, now UAPB, back in the late 40s.
Yeah. And he started the first dance band there, jazz dance band. They had to rehearse at night because jazz was not allowed on campus.
Oh, yeah, right.
So if you could just think about that, blues and jazz is not only just demonized in the church, it's the devil's music, and the movie Sinners kind of implies that, or presents that perspective, but even on campus. It wasn't seen as legitimate music. You had to play Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms.
Yes.
So they wouldn't allow them to practice on campus during the day. They had to practice at night. They won the poll for the best college dance band of 1952, the Pittsburgh Choreo.
Okay.
Poll.
Well, yeah, I'm looking at that picture right here in the book. He's directing the Arkansas State Collegians circa 1952.
Yes.
Okay.
So you see an effort to just try to make things happen, even in an environment that may be inimical and in opposition to what you're trying to do.
I see.
And so they couldn't go to Apollo to claim the trophy because the school wouldn't let them use the bus.
I see.
And we're still trying to find that trophy that they won.
Oh, man.
Because they were supposed to go to Apollo Theater and they were going to play with Lionel Hampton and Mahalia Jackson. A whole bunch of luminaries were on that program, but they never made it.
Right. Okay. And later on, just a few years after college, your father joined B.B. King. He actually played with B.B. King also.
Yeah. Yes. Floyd Newman, one of his classmates at Arkansas A&M, as it was called at that time, actually recommended him to the band.
Right.
And so when he left the Army, Floyd Newman picked him up right at the airport.
Oh, man.
And he joined them. They did like a half a year, maybe 6 months of one-nighters.
Oh, man.
And so he joined that band with the understanding when Phineas Newborn called him to go to New York, they were planning to go there before he joined BB, that there would be no 2 weeks notice, he would leave immediately.
Oh, wow.
And that's exactly what he did.
And so he eventually just made the New York area home after that.
But if you could imagine the transition to going from playing blues, electric bass, one of the first electric bass players, by the way, in 1955, with B.B. King, to playing upright bass with Phineas Newborn at Birdland in New York in the center of mainstream bebop jazz.
Yeah. Wow.
And a who's who of jazz came to see them when they got there.
Oh, yeah.
Garland, Coltrane was a big fan. It was just packed.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Mingus.
Yeah, and you know...
That's how my father got to work with, subsequently, Phineas had a breakdown. That's how he got to work with John Coltrane and all those great musicians after coming to New York.
And he also mentioned a lot in the book about Oscar Denard, too. There's quite a story with him.
And he's one of the most unknown jazz artists. If you read Quincy, not by Quincy Jones, his autobiography has not only Oscar Denard's name, but Phineas Newborn's name. But he was in Lionel Hampton's band with Oscar Denard. And Oscar Denard used to come by Quincy Jones' house to play, and there's a tape out on a record called The Legendary Oscar Denard of one of those sessions. And he produced his only studio trio album. And we've been looking for the last 20 years. Phil Schaap, before he died, and he had carte blanche to go through all the vaults of the major record companies. And that was on MRC, and he could not find it.
Wow.
He tried, but he said, I talked to him before he died, he said he tried for like 15 years to find that record.
Man, that is...
Joe Fish Benjamin and Ozzie Johnson, they said it was one of the greatest record dates, and they participated in hundreds of them in New York in that time. And they said that was one of the greatest record dates they did. It was perfect.
Wow.
And we still looking for him. My father said that he heard Quincy Jones was lending it out to arrangers because he heard some of the voices in Johnny Mandel's writing and some of the Hollywood writers. And he asked Quincy about it, and he gave him a number that must have been on the dock somewhere. Nobody answered. He would call around the clock. You know, Quincy gave him a number, so we never found that day. But you asked Johnny Griffin, well, he can't ask him now, but when I met Johnny Griffin and told him I was Jamil Nasser's son, the first person he mentioned, would he tell you about Oscar Denard?
Right.
He was a genius. This is Johnny Griffin talking. So they knew about him and they heard him. Randy Weston had to lay on the floor and listen to him. He was so powerful. He couldn't even stand up or couldn't sit in the chair. He literally had to lay on the floor.
I mean, it's
he never heard so much piano in his life.
It's like a who's who in this book, though. I would recommend it to any jazz fan out there. Again, it's called Upright Bass, The Musical Life and Legacy of Jamil Nasser. And the foreword is written by none other than Ron Carter. So, you know, it's a great book. But it's just some of every person that you could think of. You know, your dad is run into. And I want to ask Scott, you briefly, this is like in the early 70s, you know, I've read that part about, you know, Ahmad Jamal, you know, he did the, thing to MASH, the movie version, right?
1970.
Yeah, was your father on that also?
Yes.
Oh, he was. Okay, all right.
Yes, and they used to. I remember them. I go back to 1974, seeing them, and that tune they used to play all.
Oh yeah,
people were really looking forward to hearing that.
Oh yeah, And he
as soon as they started that song, the crowd would burst into applause. So that was that was like a minor hit for him.
Yeah, sure was. And he also played something else. I was going to touch on the Memphis the Bill Street Blues Festival too. Your father was one of the originators of it in 1977 over in Memphis. It's stated in the book.
Yes, and I'm so glad that they're going to do it next year because they had canceled the festival.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because there was some damage at Tom Lee Park during the festival a couple of years ago, and I guess they didn't pay the bill or something, and they couldn't operate at the Bill Street Music Festival. But they're reestablishing it, and William Shepard, who's Sybil Shepard's brother, he has the footage. He showed me a clip of my father playing with Sonny Chris, Harold Mabry. They do an unbelievable version of St. Louis Blues.
Oh, wow.
And so maybe we could make that. I'm going to petition them to maybe do a panel discussion on the first festival along with the footage.
I believe
so I'm trying to contact them now about that.
I saw a YouTube video maybe about a year ago or something on the festival, some sort of event over in Memphis during that time. I can't remember specifically what it was, but it had some of the blues, Rufus Thomas and some of the familiar people over there, in the festival. But I was wondering if that could be the same one. This was on YouTube.
73, like there was Blues Festival.
Oh yeah,
It's different. I know that was 69. I think that was on.
Oh yeah. You're exactly right.
Like
I did see that.
77, and Memphis was broke. They had no money, and so they had to basically waive their regular fees, and they did it kind of as a community service because they never felt honored by Memphis. Like their homeboys that were working, not homeboys, excuse me, their associates. In the music business were going to Memphis making money and coming back and telling them, and they never got an invitation. So they said, let's go down there and show them what we got. Maybe they forgot about us.
Oh, wow.
And it was a historical festival because it's the only time they all came back to Memphis and played since they left it.
Right. Yeah.
And a comprehensive attendance like they came out on in that year. It was never. I mean, they had it subsequent years 78, 79, but they never all came back like they did in 77.
Yeah.
And Sonny Chris, he died 4 months later. He shot himself in the head. He found out he had stomach cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he shot himself in the head in November. And he said he hadn't been back to Memphis. His father was in the audience and his aunt. He said they haven't seen me play since 1952. He said he hadn't been back to Memphis in 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And so he is barely able to return. And remember, Sonny Skip, just to show you the magnitude of his talent, he held his own besides Charlie Parker.
Wow.
It's on record. You don't have to take my word for it. Go put in YouTube, put in Sonny Chris and Charlie Parker, and listen to them standing together.
Okay, I'll do just that too.
He more than held his own against Charlie Parker. I think he played better on that night, if you ask me. That's just to give you a sense of who this man was.
Okay. Well,
the most thing I'm excited about is like, you see a lot of jazz documentary, and they just talk about the bandstand, the music, and the greater glories of being a jazz musician, but a lot of them didn't own their music. They gave the music away.
Right.
And my father was getting on the radio and TV in the tradition of G.G. Grice, who told all the musicians, when you write a song, half goes to the publisher and half goes to the writer.
That's right. And
so if you wrote a song and gave me, and you published it with me, if the song makes $1 million, I get $500,000. They were just giving their publishing away to the music companies, the recording companies.
And your father did go into publishing in the late 60s, I read, was it?
And they had a record company. Him and Ahmad Jamal had Jamal Records from 1969 to 1971.
Yes. Okay.
I tell a story about that. And Ahmad told me from his own mouth that he lost $800,000. That's $1969, ladies and gentlemen. So it's probably twice that.
Yeah.
In terms of today's value.
And I see.
They couldn't even get an album on the shelf.
And your father eventually got out of music in the mid '70s and turned to real estate, right?
And if you, I was just watching something on New York in the mid '70s. 1975, New York was bankrupt, and they appealed to Gerald Ford, who was then the president, and he told him to drop dead. He eventually had to give him some money to bail him out because it was too big to fail. They couldn't let New York just fall like that. But it was just not a good time for real estate, to be in a real estate business. You know, the country was in like a recession. It was inflation. And so he said he couldn't walk away from the commitment he made to music. He was just going to play music for his own hobby and on a part-time basis. But he decided not to do that because he was still enthusiastic about playing. He thought he could stop, but he couldn't.
I'm looking at the picture in the book right now with you and your brothers and sister, Umar Zaid, and this was circa 1975. Just looking at the picture right now.
And I think, if I recall, we were he was playing with Ahmad, Jamal, and Philly. That's a year before he left the group. And he took us for that to that concert.
Oh, wow.
And so we were on our way there. Zayd plays too. Zayd is a fantastic alto saxophone player. He got his thumbs up from Junior Cook, from George Coleman, Clifford Jordan, all those great players. They loved him.
Oh, man.
But it's just sometimes hard to get a break. And my father was like a rebel. He really challenged racism. And so he just wasn't playing on the bandstand. He started the Jazz Foundation, which established free medical care for the musicians and dental care. And so he was service-oriented. It's not just about, just celebrating the great artists on the bandstand. But as you just pointed out, he left those lights and hand claps and to go sit in the office. The boring office in Westbury and one in New Rochelle. I can remember them well.
Oh, man.
And so he left the stage. Because we gave music away, we don't own the music. And when you think about coming out of slavery and not owning anything, or not even being able to read and write, look at the great musicians that died. Roy Haynes don't have a book. He promised that he was going to write one, as did Larry Willis. Ahmad, Jamal don't have a book or a documentary. These cats lived into their 90s.
Yeah.
That's inexcusable. I mean, since I've written that book, there's been a handful of jazz. I tell everybody, every jazz book is rare. It's not being written.
And this is so detailed too. It is very detailed. I mean, God, it's the story after story after story.
15 years and $15,000 to write that book.
Oh, man.
And I went over I poured over every sentence. And so, because he was that kind of person, very meticulous, I wanted to reflect his music, because when you hear their music, it's on that kind of level.
Yeah.
And I didn't want the book to be any less than that. But I'm really emphasizing his off the bandstand work, because a lot of these books are just celebrations of, it go from the recording studio to the stage, and they don't tell you about what's going on in between.
Yeah,
a lot of those musicians were starving to death in New York. After making classic albums, I used to see Junior Cook and Cecil Peck. You should have saw like the clothes they had on. These cats had holes in their sweaters and scuffed up shoes. And nobody wants to talk about that. They just want to talk about the great aspect of, how the music was made and who blew the house down. And that's cool. But they didn't own any of those clubs. They didn't own their masters. Even Ray Charles, a blind junkie in 1959, mind you, he asked to own his masters. I used to think because they were all on drugs, they didn't take care of business. But guess who ruined that for them? Ray Charles. He asked for his masters in 1959. Miles Davis got off drugs.
Right.
John Coltrane. And when they signed new contracts, their whole fortune and the whole situation in their life changed from that one decision. So it did play a role, but a lot of those guys did not. My father used to try to meet with them and try to get them to take care of business. They wouldn't do it. And so that has to be dealt with as much as any good aspect that we love about the music. It's how come hardly no one owned their masters across the board?
And this is and toward the end of the book, it talks about jazz as a national treasure. Back in '87. They tried to get a resolution in the House that designated jazz as a national treasure. It's just three forms. So they did their best to to keep the dream, keep it alive. For other generations, to enjoy. That's basically
just like Jazz and Justice. This book that just came out, Flugelhorn. And it's a good book. I've read it, but he doesn't seem to understand that's an ongoing movement. That's not a historical proposition,
right?
As he presented it in the book. There's an actual movement called Jazz and Justice, because the jazz musicians found out through the musicians union, if the leader plays every time a group plays at a venue, if he pays into the pension fund $20, by the time they retire, like if Ahmad had paid in the pension fund and he played with him over 10 years, he would have had $3,000 or $4,000 a month to retire off of. But they didn't know that. They kind of kept it a secret from the jazz musicians, and they discovered it in 1996. 1959. Dizzy Gillespie was getting $89 a month in his pension, whereas if he had paid him through all them 60, 70 years that he was active, he would have had, $5,000 or $6,000 to retire off. Instead, he had $89 a month.
Oh God!
After a lifetime of playing music. So these little things that people don't want to talk about, we need to talk about the feel-good aspects of jazz history, but we need to talk about the other parts that are not so positive in terms of not owning the music and owning venues. And my father was trying to move the musicians into that direction.
Well,
I like to emphasize that as much as the music.
Well, can I ask you who are your main influences? Who were you influenced by?
And I opened the book, just describing us walking to the village gate for the tribute to Blue Mitchell in 1970. I didn't even know who Blue Mitchell was. I had just turned 12. My father picked us up on a school night and took us, and I saw Richard Williams, Virgil Jones, Jimmy Owens, all these great trumpet players. And 3 years prior to that, I saw Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, man.
So Dizzy Gillespie, Miles, especially Miles there, my father brought me cooking and relaxing and working and steaming, and he took me to see Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, man.
So Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie would have been two of my main influences.
I see, okay.
Because I got to actually see Dizzy.
Man.
And we were waiting for Miles to come out of retirement, as he eventually did. I love Clifford Brown. I got to see Freddie Hubbard, too.
Oh, really?
And Freddie Hubbard talked about Booker Little, who's from Memphis. They were the same age. He said Booker Little, just to show you the magnitude of the musicians from Memphis, they played so fast, he would go from Indianapolis to Chicago, he would have to sit in the audience.
Oh, wow.
Now, mind you, Frank Sturgis is a year older than Freddie, and Booker Little and him are the same age.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how he said Booker Little was the fastest trumpet player he ever encountered.
Man, that brings me to something else that I saw recently. Over in Memphis, the Central High School Jazz Band. I happened to clip on them. They were in the Ellington competition up in at the Lincoln Center. Yeah, that was outstanding. That was very impressive. So there are still a lot of talented young folk over in Memphis. Right now, you're the next generation of great jazz players coming from Memphis.
And when they wrote about it in the paper, they said, Duke Ellington came to Memphis in 1932. And so whoever was writing that didn't really understand the rich legacy of jazz in Memphis.
Right.
Because they didn't mention Frank Sturgis, George Coleman, Jamil Nasser, none of those guys that laid the foundation for Central High School to be able to compete, and win.
Right.
That's establishing a foundation for jazz in Memphis. Not that they knew those guys or these musicians mentored them, but just against the backdrop of that history. They're not playing in a vacuum.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so they should know. And I tried to reach the band director, but he was busy when he came to the Gen Conference.
I see.
So hopefully, and I've been to the Memphis Jazz Workshop and presented the book to them or some aspects of it. And I would really like to have access to those students as well. Because I don't know if they're aware of this history that's behind them.
Right.
And that should inspire them even more, to go on. Because those guys went all the way. Phineas Newborn still is like a torchbearer for higher attainment in music. He played every instrument.
Yeah, I got some Phineas Newborn lined up here. As soon as we're finished, we're going to play a couple of Phineas Newborn tunes. But let me go ahead and wrap this up and everything. So you'll be playing tomorrow night, right, at 7:30 in North Little Rock over in Argenta?
Yes.
Okay. And
can I say something about Blue House Session right quick?
Cool. Yeah.
It was a concert that was canceled. I was supposed to play Jazz in the Garden in Washington, D.C. It was going to be their first Juneteenth jazz concert.
Oh, wow.
And it was a little bit overcast that morning. They called me about 11 o'clock and canceled it. It didn't rain at all. They still paid us, though. And with the proceeds I hired the band and took them in the studio, and I said, look, we're going to play the set we rehearsed and was intending to play anyway. And that's why we have this album, Blue House Session.
Oh, wow.
Because we played that we were on the bandstand. Think of that as a live date without an audience. Because we weren't in separate booths in the studio, and it was 10 o'clock in the morning when we played that.
All right, well,
so we walked out of there at 12 o'clock. So we tried to play like we were in a club at 9 or 10 at night, but we had to do it in the morning.
I see. Okay, now I got some more of your music lined up here too this morning and everything. So it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I'm looking forward to talking with you tomorrow. Well, I'll see you tomorrow evening. That's at 7:30 over in North Little Rock in Argenta.
Looking forward to it.
All right, the Muneer Nasser Quintet and Blue House
Thank
Session.
you so much.
All right, and till then, man, keep jamming, and call us up anytime, anything you need.
Thank you so much, Russell. I'm talking to you.
All right, man.
And thanks for this opportunity.
All right, peace, man. Again, the book is Upright Bass, Musical Legacy of Jamil Nasser by Muneer Nasser. All right. And we'll take it to one more of their tunes and then some finished snoobing. You're listening to Wednesday Jazz Venue. I'm Russell.
Russell.
Yeah.
Can you play Public Eye?
Public Eye sure will.
Yeah, that's the fire track. And me and Elijah Easton, he's a young saxophone, we get into a little cutting contest.
Okay.
And I just wanted to bring the music back to like just simple melodies, nothing you have to really think about. Because a lot of the jazz today is rambles, blues meter. It's like they're dropping and swinging the blues from jazz. And I think that's going to be a big mistake because I mean, when jazz did that last time, they went to free jazz, they lost a lot of the black audience, a lot of the audience in general.
Right.
But the African American audience has to be able to pack their foot and have a beat. That's why they were able to sell it more in Europe, because they don't require that as much, So I would like to see the music come back to that, because it's more college-oriented, and the musicians writing for themselves than writing for the people. Folk music is for the folk, and folk music is usually what? Simple.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So they can relate to it. But thank you so much again.
All right. Anytime, man. Just call us up anytime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.